Welcome to The Explainer. We all walk around with this default assumption that our eyes and ears are like a high-definition camera, just recording the world as it is. But what if I told you that's not true at all? What if your brain is actually more of a creative filmmaker, constantly editing, inventing, and sometimes straight up lying to you?
That's really the big question we're going to dig into. Because the truth is, the reality you experience is surprisingly fragile, it's incomplete, and yeah, it's systematically distorted. So get ready, because things are about to get a little weird.
Okay, so the first crack in this idea of a perfect reality is that we're working with shockingly limited information. The senses we rely on, our so-called windows to the world, they're actually more like tiny, tiny keyholes.
I mean, just look at this. This giant bar represents the entire electromagnetic spectrum. We're talking radio waves, microwaves, X-rays, the whole shebang. Now see that little sliver, that almost invisible line? That's visible light. That's all we get. It's about 0.0035% of what's actually out there. That means we are completely blind to 99.99% of the universe around us.
And this really puts into perspective how much we're missing. Honeybees, for example, they see these amazing ultraviolet patterns on flowers that are totally invisible to us. A rattlesnake can literally see the heat coming off its prey in pitch-black darkness. Elephants can talk to each other across miles using sounds that are too low for us to even register. And yeah, your dog, it's living in a whole other world of smells that we can't even begin to imagine. Our reality is just one very, very filtered version.
So our sensory window is tiny. But believe it or not, it gets worse. Even within that narrow little slice of reality we can access, our brain often just fails to see what's right there in front of us. Which brings us to our second point.
It's a phenomenon called inattentional blindness. And it's not a problem with your eyes, it's a problem with your attention. It means that when we focus our mental spotlight on one thing, we can become functionally blind to everything else, even if it's completely obvious. And this is the experiment that made this famous. So researchers had people watch a video and count how many times a basketball was passed. Simple, right? But halfway through, a person in a full-body gorilla suit walks right into the middle of the game, thumps their chest, and walks off. The result? 50%. Half of the people never saw the gorilla. Their eyes passed right over it, but their brain didn't register it at all. And look, this isn't just some funny lab trick. This has real life and death consequences. In one study, when experienced radiologists were told to look for specific issues on a set of scans, a full 30% of them completely missed a cancerous lung nodule that was clearly visible on the screen. Why? Their attention was just focused somewhere else. Our attention is it's so unreliable. Get this, in another wild experiment, a researcher stopped someone on the street to ask for directions. Then, two guys carrying a door walk between them. And in that split second, the researcher is swapped out for a totally different person. And about half the people didn't even notice. They just kept giving directions to this new person like nothing had happened. It's crazy.
All right, so our senses are limited and our attention is flaky. But here comes the biggest plot twist of all. Your brain isn't just passively receiving information. No way. It is actively building your reality from scratch.
There's this idea called predictive processing. And the gist is this. Your brain takes that garbage, incomplete data from your senses, mashes it together with all your past experiences and expectations, and then it makes a prediction. It makes its best guess about what's out there. So what you perceive isn't raw reality. It's just your brain's best guess. And sometimes, that guess is just flat out wrong.
Let's try it out right now. I'm going to play a sound. All you have to do is listen. Simple enough. You heard the sound ba.
Okay, now for part 2. Forget the audio for a second. Just watch the lips on the screen. Visually, this person is making the mouth shape for the sound ga. All right, here's where the magic happens. We're going to play the ba sound while you watch the ga lips. Listen really closely and decide what sound you actually hear. Ready? So, did you hear da? If you did, you're like most people. But here's the kicker. The sound da was never played. It doesn't exist. Your ears were getting ba, your eyes were seeing ga, and your brain, faced with this conflicting data, just split the difference and invented a brand new sound out of thin air. It literally constructed a piece of reality just for you. So, how is our brain doing all this guessing and inventing? Well, it uses a bunch of mental shortcuts, or biases. And for the most part, they help us make quick decisions to survive. But they also systematically twist how we see the world. Let's start with a really powerful one, the availability heuristic. Basically, our brains are terrible with statistics, but they're great at remembering vivid stories. So if we can easily recall a dramatic example of something, we automatically assume it must be really common and dangerous.
This creates this huge disconnect between how we feel about risk and what the actual risk is. A plane crash is horrifying and gets tons of media coverage, so air travel feels incredibly dangerous. But the data here is crystal clear. Traveling by car is astronomically more dangerous. We're talking 150 deaths per billion miles in a car versus just 0.07 on a plane. Our gut feeling, shaped by these available stories, is completely wrong.
And then there's this one, which might be the most powerful of all. Confirmation bias. The moment we form a belief, our brain goes to work like a biased lawyer. It starts selectively searching for any piece of evidence that proves it's right, while actively ignoring, dismissing, or forgetting anything that suggests it might be wrong.
And you see this bias playing out everywhere, even in super high-stakes situations. A doctor who makes an early diagnosis might unconsciously ignore symptoms that point to something else. An investor who loves a certain stock will hunt for news that says it's a great buy. And we all do this, right? We tend to watch news channels and read articles that confirm what we already think, locking us into our own little customized reality bubble.
So what does this all mean? Where does this leave us? Well, we know our senses are limited, we know our attention is faulty, and we know our brain is basically just making up a story based on guesses and biases. The conclusion, honestly, is both a little unsettling but also pretty empowering. This brings us to what might be the biggest idea of this whole explainer. Think of your perception not as a crystal clear window onto the world, but as a computer's user interface, right? It hides all the messy, complicated code of reality and just shows you a few simple icons you can click on to survive. Food, danger, friend. It's an evolutionary tool that's been optimized to be useful, not to be truthful. And so, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. If your entire conscious experience, everything you see, hear, and feel, is just a simplified user interface that your brain built for you, what's really happening out there, behind the screen that your brain has decided you simply don't need to know about? That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.